Hey guys! So today you and I are going to talk about scope creep. So let's get into it. So the question was basically, Frederick, how do I avoid being forced to change my code or to scope creep on my stories? And the short answer is MVP, my friend. That is what MVP helps you with. Let me explain. So I know that some people have this idea that MVP is bad, and I will be the first person to tell you that if I have ever given you that idea, I will tell you that that is incorrect, because MVP is not a bad idea. The problem with MVP is that it is very hard to do this right, because people don't understand how to do it. That's the fundamental problem. And as I've stated many times before, a genius idea doesn't really help you if people don't understand how to apply it. It's the same thing with tooling, same thing with programming languages, etc., etc., etc. So the thing is, though, that when you apply MVP in the correct fashion, it actually makes the odds of you scope creeping something much smaller. Now let's just define this first and foremost. So scope creeping in its essence is that you build something where you have decided that this thing here is done when we have delivered this much, when it's doing this. And then at some point you have a stakeholder, a PO, or a designer, or someone who comes in and says, hey, you know what, no, my artistic mindset has gone in a different fashion, and I want to change that color there to that instead. And then the PO comes in and says, oh yeah, this is good, but you know what, it would be so much better if the whole thing worked on Android as well. That is scope creep. It's the idea that you can at any point come into a story delivery of some sort and just change what you decided on building. It's like changing the specs. It's like if you were a car manufacturer and somebody asks you to build a brand of car, and then in the middle of the thing they come in and say, when you're half done, they come and say, hey, you know what, we've just realized that no, we don't want to build a Volvo, we want to build a Ferrari instead, make that a Ferrari instead, and then they just fuck off again, and then you stand there, okay, yeah, that's not going to be tricky for me right now. This is one of the hardest, and for me personally, one of the most frustrating things that can happen in software development. It is the bane of my mental health. It's the thing that makes me lose all my hair. It's the thing that makes me gray and sad and so unhappy. Because the problem is, as you can imagine, you start working on a set of assumptions, and because you have to be able to make assumptions when you're delivering software, you have to be able to state that, okay, we're going to build a system that does this, and then you write your code and try to implement those features. And at any time, someone can come in and just say, hey, you know what, that's great, but now it needs to do that as well. And depending on what they're saying, you must now either hack it together some way, or you have to just throw away all the work you just did and redo the whole thing over again, because now the specification has changed. And the best part is that if you have stakeholders that are very bad, they will ask you, why is this taking so long? You said you were going to be done in a week. Why are you still working after 3 weeks? And you just sit there and you go, but you keep on changing the requirements all the time. It takes me time to change the thing that it takes you 2 seconds to have an opinion on. You can come in at any point and just say, oh, we're going to do that instead. Do it. And I go, okay, great. This is now extending my workload by 2 weeks. It's cause and effect. It's very simple. So that's the thing with MVP. You see, if you can get people to an MVP mindset, it is much more likely that you will be able to finish one piece of work, ship that, try it out, let people reflect on if this thing is working, is this going in the right direction, and so forth. without investing too much time, because the longer you work on a feature, the likelier you are to find. This is why Waterfall has been failing for such a long time, because when you try to see the whole feature, even the stakeholders, they will not be able to foresee all the parts that needs to click in order for the entire feature to work. I don't know how many times I've been in the situation where we're getting to the end of the deliverable or of the story, and then the testing starts, and then all of a sudden all the stakeholder starts to realize that, oh, there's all these missed things that we didn't think about when we were designing this feature. We, the developers, we have built this exactly the way that we were told to build it, but it's still not the right thing, because nobody has foreseen the intricate details that make up the feature in certain areas. So now we're in a situation where what usually happens, and this is where system legacy starts to kind of pile up immediately, we're now forced to make the hard call. Either we have to ignore the fact that the system doesn't do what we want it to do, or we have to hack it together, because you can't rewrite the whole feature, or hopefully at least we can change some parts of it, because ideally this should not have been shipped, because if it has been shipped, you might be in another sort of problem where, oh, the system is now live, or parts of the system is live, and now you have to make a breaking change or something like that, which is a different sort of problem. It's usually very important that you get things right enough in the beginning. That's very important, because it becomes such a hassle when the code is out in the live environment, and let's say that you're creating records or database entries and stuff like that, and now the models change or something like that, and now you have to deal with that in some fashion, migrate them, or there's tons of complexity related to it. But if you do this in an MVP fashion, you will solve this problem pretty much immediately, because if you ship the smallest minimum basic thing that you can think of, allow the stakeholders to use it and reflect on, is this doing what we wanted to do, and then add the next piece, and then the next piece, and then the next piece. This adds more overhead process, like more administrative work to the process, but the odds of you building the wrong thing goes down sharply. The differences are enormous. The odds of you finding potential issues with the specification it's a different world. The times that I find that I can ship something in a very smooth fashion when I work in an MVP fashion versus when I have to pretty much do the convenient thing, which is Waterfall, and I've said this before as well. Waterfall is what the whole world, everybody in this industry wants Waterfall, because it's the most convenient thing for the stakeholder. Problem is, as I said, it doesn't work. It has never worked for large-scale features, and it will never work, because unfortunately our human minds are not capable of figuring out every single thing about a large concept in such intricate details that we can just mentally spot all the oversights. It's not possible. So what I want you to take away from this is that if you're dealing with scope creep problems and having people change the requirements as you kind of go along, I can only tell you that you need to push the idea of working in an MVP fashion. You need to slice everything up into the minimum stories that you possibly can slice them down to. And I'm talking like as small as it makes sense to make them, and then ship piece by piece. Because when you do that, you can be certain that the scope of changing something is discovered before you have implemented like the whole thing. And at the end, everybody goes, oh no, but this is not what we want. Because when you've implemented it in that fashion, it might be a lot trickier for you to solve that problem than if you found it exactly at the moment when you started working on that part of the feature that is now not what everybody is expecting it to be. So MVP, it may not always be the perfect solution, and you need to know how to apply it in order for it to work, but for scope creeping, it's a great, well-working system to use. Have a great day.